Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately named IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and you can find out more information about them by visiting ipaworld.org. As part of our efforts to promote play, we're happy to introduce Porch Play Chats. And these are conversations that focus on a wide range of topics from experts that are just as passionate about play as we are. You can find the latest Porch Play Chats and learn more about IPA-USA by visiting our website at IPA-USA.org. Up in that top right-hand corner, you can access our Facebook page and our YouTube channel and our Instagram page, because one Porch Play Chat is released every Monday on both the YouTube channel and our Facebook page. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA-USA, and with me on the porch today is Rixa Evershed. Rixa has been in the early childhood education and care profession for many years, and was started out as a family child care provider at Fort Drum in New York. And from there, she's moved into center-based care, and she is currently the early childhood education director of Charles Wright Academy. Rixa, so happy to see you again. And so I know it's like old home week, as what I always talk to people. It's like going to a conference that we haven't been able to go to for years.
I know.
And just seeing all the people that you know and love. So Rixa's going to talk to us today about what it looks like to create a space where risk, which is so important, is acceptable and encouraged. And you know, I'm a crazy person about taking risks. So I am so excited that we're doing this.
Well, you know, our last chat, we sort of went off on the idea of what it looks like to create space for teachers to risk in their practice. Mm-hmm. And you know, with the current environment, I think so many teachers, so a couple of things that pop for me is this idea of learning loss, and because children haven't been in school, and this idea that now teachers are being tasked with catching children up, right? Yeah. And I think when we talk about play and we talk about play-focused classrooms, we talk about the pathway for children to re-enter social spaces in a way that is authentic and sees them as human, considers the experience, because they didn't not learn anything over the last year. They've learned so much. Mm-hmm. And you know, for us to consider or to look at it as if they've lost something in the last year instead of reframing it with what they've gained. And I think part of that is teachers stepping forward and saying, look, play is the way to make sure that these children have what they need. They can process the trauma and the impact of the last year of being remote learning. And I mean, even some of the Head Starts in preschools have been remote. And so re-entering social,
re-entering those social spaces. You know, I don't know if you read the article that I put in the link for the Zoom stuff, but Mike Huber and I just wrote an article for Exchange, what we learned from the pandemic.
Yes.
And we really talked about this piece of, it is not our job to catch children up. You got to stop that. You got to really think about, how do we re-engage? How do we rebuild relationships? How do we give them time to process? How can they play with friends? And, you know, stop this. We got to catch them up stuff.
And they're not behind.
No.
They're good.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Good. So yes, so when you said that, I was like, oh, see, Rick and I, oh.
Yes. I've really been thinking about it a lot, because you know, the way the media has portrayed the impacts on children, and I just don't think it's an accurate portrayal. I've watched some amazing things happen with children over the last year that wouldn't have happened without the pandemic. And perhaps we just need to reconsider what it is that we find important about our education. And, when we talk things like assessment and making sure that children are on par developmentally and things like that, I think we dehumanize or take out the individual aspect of a child, the way they learn, the way they experience the world, what they're curious about. I just think that those are the things that are so critically important with children and with teachers. Like, teachers need to be curiosity driven too.
Yes. Yes. And so when we, in the last Porch Play Chat that we did tape right before this one, we were really talking about the importance of being keen observers, not to do the checklist, right, that you're required to do every 3 months or something, which is ridiculous. Because, how much changes in a child's development in 3 months and why are you wasting so much time in 3 months, every 3 months, when you could be scaffolding, extending, following children's interests? We've really just gotten so into the accountability piece that we have to find our way back, and we've lost our way. We really have.
We so have.
We've lost our way.
I find myself very concerned about this idea of universal preschool, universal pre-K, because it's based on an old-fashioned notion, a Western European notion that children need to be taught. And I would challenge that by saying that we are tasked with co-constructing knowledge with children about the things that they're curious about the things that we're curious about, and coming at it. I am a huge proponent of the idea that children are equally the teacher in the classroom, that I learn as much from them as they potentially learn from me, and that my job really has to be about observation and facilitation and not about teaching. And putting, like, it can't be about me. It has to be about the children in the classroom. And I think when we talk about risk, that feels very risky for teachers to do.
It does. Yeah, it does. It feels very risky because they're afraid they feel like they're accountable for children learning,
right,
instead of being accountable for setting up the environment and the space and the routine that promotes learning. And whether it's teacher guided or open-ended, child initiated, or something that the teacher plans, like a provocation, it's about the pre-planning, not about what takes place during that piece of the day, right?
And it's about being flexible and responsive to the provocation going in a direction that you may not have ever thought it would go.
That's exactly right. And then really, really saying, okay, oh my goodness, look what they're doing. And how can I extend, scaffold, instead of it being, well, I spend a lot of time on that. And they're not doing anything that I wanted them to do. I mean, I've heard teachers say that.
I saw it on Pinterest and I thought it was a great idea.
I know. I thought why did you choose that activity? Oh, because the children love it. I don't want to hear that the children love it. Why did you?
Yeah.
Why? I'm glad they loved it. Right. But why did you choose that activity?
Right.
What was your intention behind that? And did it take place, or did they take it in a different direction? And that's learning, right?
I bet you hear this a lot. I know I hear this a lot. The but what abouts. But but what about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s? And
oh my goodness.
And my sister-in-law, I think I talked about this last time, is unschooling. She's a certified 3rd grade teacher, just an amazing educator. And she and my brother made the decision to unschool their children. And she started as soon as they were born with just making sure they had access to open-ended materials and all the things, right? And when I look at those two, they're 8 and 5 now. I see the depth of knowledge they have about so many things. I just, if there was ever an action research, watching my niece and nephew grow up in this environment has really just been amazing in its support of play, because my nephew is reading like chapter books at 5. My niece is like well into other things. My nephew came up the other day and he was talking all about volcanoes, and he had all the different pieces of it. And it wasn't just the knowledge that comes like with, oh, a volcano shoots out lava, right? He's like, and it does this and it does that. And he had all these layers. And I'll never forget when we were at the Seattle Science Institute, I think it's called, a couple years ago. They have an installation there for space, and they have on index cards like a Rolodex all the constellations. And he couldn't read at that point, but he went through and he could name all the constellations because he was interested like in space. And so he was 2 or 3 at the time. And so, you know, I think being aware, for me, I think helping teachers make that shift from I have to do this because this was how I was taught, to recognizing that the job is more about watching the child, listening to what they're saying. And, you know, it can be something as small. I did the Boulder Journey School online conference this year. It was amazing, as always. They do such a fun amazing stuff. Yeah. And one of the chapters was about their fish, and about how because they weren't out in the hallways anymore, they had to figure out a way to connect with their fish. And because the fish lived in a tank up at the front of the center. And the whole conference was about connection in different ways. But I thought, you know, if that could have easily been something like a teacher going, oh, well, you know, when the pandemic's over, we'll get to see fish again.
Right.
But instead, they turned it into this absolutely magical interaction with the fish, and writing letters about the fish and making documentation about the fish. And it was beautiful. And then in their in one of their toddler classrooms, they explored what it meant to connect via Zoom. And it literally brought tears to my eyes, watching the teacher interact with this baby who was sitting on the table, the computer in front of them. They were interacting, they weren't talking, but it was such a powerful interaction. And I thought, that's what's missing when we start teaching to the assessment. That's what's missing when we take risk out of classrooms, because it's risky or it feels risky to follow the child's lead. It feels risky to say, I am going to set up a Zoom call with the other toddler classroom today and see what happens.
That's, and again, what you're describing is the importance of relationships instead of academic content, right? That more happens. Yes, more happens when you focus on building that positive, trusting, loving, nurturing relationship that then children reciprocate, because they're imitating you, and what you are doing to them, they do back to you. And that's how we make competent, capable, socially acceptable behavior, which at sometimes I'm not seeing much anymore with adults.
And prioritizing the child, like when I think about that Zoom interaction, I think about how we are inventing new ways to connect out of necessity.
Mhm.
But that even though there wasn't physical touch there was like this heart moment that happened there that was so relational, and it was equally as powerful in a different way than cuddling up with that child and reading a story and that kind of thing, which we're still doing. We're just doing it in our own little spaces and our own little cohorts and things like that. And I don't know. I hope I keep saying to anybody who will listen, like, we need to come out of this more focused on, or we need to continue to move through it, I think is where we're really at.
Yeah.
More focused on relationship and less focused on transaction.
Exactly. And then so in a classroom, how can a teacher let go of the fear that she or he may have about allowing children to take risk, and what we mean by risk? Because I think it, just as we talked last time, the teacher taking risks is one big thing, right? Taking a risk to not have a rigid routine, or not having a rigid schedule, or taking a risk to allow children to actually explore without having a teacher telling them which group they're going to be in and how often they have to rotate.
Make
Those
sure
are
you stay
all,
on a piece of paper. Make sure.
yeah,
Yes.
all those are risks that I think is a whole workshop in itself about teachers taking risks, right? So I think that's a whole nother Porch Play Chat that we could extend from last time. But how then, because I see kids who are too scared because they've been told, don't touch that. Don't do that. Don't, right? And they,
for
and
sure.
that they look at the adult to say, is this okay? Should I, we're making them so anxious when what they may want to be doing isn't a hazard.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
We froze for a second.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you see me?
I can see you. Yeah. Can you see me?
Okay, we're good.
Okay,
we had
good.
a moment. We had a moment, folks.
We had a moment. Welcome to technology. So, how can we help them help children not be fearful of taking what I always term as acceptable risk, without having so much anxiety that they're going to get in trouble?
And I think that's the key right there. And one of the things that I've used over and over and over again is, like, if a teacher will come to me and I'll say, but I don't want to get in trouble. One of the first things out of my mouth is always, well, have you ever gotten in trouble with me? Like, and I'm the one encouraging you to do these things, And so I think it's all levels have to develop a trusting relationship, and it has to be that they can trust me to allow them to risk, from a director standpoint. And then they can trust the children, and then it goes back up, right? Then the children can trust the teacher to have their back, and then the teachers can trust the administration to have their back. And I know that at the beginning of last summer, we talked a little bit last time about my experience last summer with being outside with the 6 4-year-olds, and what that looked like. And I remember you asked the question about how do we encourage children who are fearful to engage, right? And that they came out of lockdown like that. They came out of lockdown, and I think one of the boys was much more in tune with, like, I can do this, I can climb that tree, I'm able to do that. the other one really wanted to do it, but was scared of taking those first steps. And what I did, and there's so many ways to approach this, but what I did was I was like, well, when you're ready, you're going to be able to do that. But you got to start, you got to try. Miss Rixa, will you help me to the first branch? Nope, I won't, and I've gotten pushback about saying no to a child of like, no, I'm not going to help you with that. I'm going to stand here and I'm going to be here with you. And I know you can do it when you're ready, but I'm not going to do it for you. And I don't use no a lot, but when it comes to encouraging children to do something that could potentially put their body at risk, like climb a tree, I think they need to understand that it really 100% has to come from within themselves. That I can't even, so for me, I wasn't even close to the branches where they were, because it's so critically important that they be in tune with what's going on inside of themselves, that their body feels safe, that they have a plan. And so those were my two questions as they learned to do this. And by the end of the summer, that boy who was scared to go up was climbing gates. He was going 20 feet up in the cedar tree. Like he had it down, and he had the ability and the knowledge to know he did that without anybody else helping.
And so think of the agency that you gifted him. You gifted him the understanding that he can do this, and that you have confidence that he can when he's ready.
Yeah.
And that it's just, one step at a time. And no, I'm not going to help you because I know you can do it when you're ready. And that, I think, builds more confidence than, and it's really funny. I think it was Magna Gerber who said, a child never falls off of something that they've gotten to. They only fall off of something that an adult has placed them on, right? Because they haven't learned that, what they need to do to get there. And I was like, yeah, because, they'll say, can you help me? And of course, we're all like, of course I'll help you. When we need to recognize that we're not really helping, we're interfering. Right, with learning.
We take something away from them when we help them. Magna Gerber also said, like, and I'm not going to get this perfect, but you take away from the child when you do something for them that they can do for themselves. And that's not exactly how she said it, but that's so true.
It's almost like we feel like, because we're afraid of getting in trouble, what if they fall and hurt themselves and I have to write an accident report? And so, all I would say to a parent when a child had a skin knee for the third time that week, and I was handing them the accident report, and they would say, well, aren't you watching then? I said, did you fall when you were a child? Do you remember falling? Yes. I said, they have to fall and learn how to pick themselves back up. That's how they keep from falling later, right? And the parent would look at me and I said, scratch knees hurt, but it's a normal part of growing up.
Yes, it is.
And it will prevent them from having worse injuries if they learn how to pick themselves up and how not to trip or fall. The playground did not have anything that they could trip over. They were just running and fell. Okay, yes. I learned something. Maybe I need to watch where I'm headed, or I need to do. So, again, parents would look at me and I said, I cried as much as they did when they fell. Yeah. Let me tell you. But
I think the other thing that I learned with risk is that helping children lean into fear and not to avoid it. I have been chatting with Robin Temple, who I know that you're also going to have on. Yes. I know she's amazing. Oh my God, she's amazing. I love her so much. And she and I have talked often about, like, when we lean children into fear, that they can learn how to negotiate inside of a space that doesn't feel comfortable, and that it's not perfectly solved for them, and that they have to really think hard about choices and about interactions and all the things that happen inside of there. Because when you have somebody who has never had to experience discourse or experience fear or adversity, they get to adulthood and they cannot function inside of a workforce. They cannot function inside college. Like, nobody's holding your hand in college. They're like, you paid us $11,000, off you go, you know? And so knowing how to do that is so critically important, and it actually helps prevent injury, and it helps prevent them getting into trouble that has irreconcilable
Consequences.
you know?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So as we are thinking about helping teachers allow children the freedom and the opportunity to take risks, and we're encouraging them to try something. You've already given us tons of tools that a teacher can use. I think as we close this one, because I can't believe it's already been however long it's been, because we could just go on for hours.
I know.
As we close this one and think of the next one for October 4th, 5th, and 6th, as we close this one, the final thoughts that you have about teachers feeling like they have permission. You've given us some tools. No, I'm not going to help you. I know you can do it. I know when you're ready, you'll try. I feel confident and I trust you to make a good decision. All those tools. How can the teacher get past the fear? And if they have a director or an administrator that's like, well, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. Do you have a couple of suggestions for them?
Well, I think you named it when you talked about what we do with children, right? I think teachers need to lean into the fear a little bit. They need to acknowledge that it's there. They need to dismantle it themselves. I can stand with you. I can support you. I can't do it for you. I can give you suggestions. And ultimately, I think what it really comes down to, and I feel like the system has sort of beaten this out of teachers, is that you need to follow curiosity. You need to be curiosity driven. Like, what would happen if I did this in my classroom? And then really kind of not trying to manage the heck out of it, like you strangle it, you try to manage it so hard, and instead just kind of taking a deep breath and stepping back. Because when you move from a more traditionally focused classroom to a risk focused, play focused classroom, children need to learn how to exist in that new space.
Yes.
And so it's a co-construction of knowledge. Is like, we're going to try this today. And I think teachers learn how to do it at the same pace and the same rate that children do. And they learn in that journey to trust each other and to be responsive to each other. And for me, journaling, my learning journal is everything. Like, I write down what worked. I write down what didn't. I write down what I'd like to try next time. I write down things like the words that the children are using in the classroom. I write down what I hear teachers say in the break room, and, just really, and it comes back to observation and documentation, right? Is like really writing the things down so that you can spend some time with it and then figure out what next steps. Because if you're really play focused and have a lot of experience with that, and you're bringing someone along who has never done that before, it's the same pedagogical practice that we use with children.
It is. It absolutely is. And I remember when I was a teacher on the playground, and a child didn't know how to cross the monkey bars when we were still able to have those, right?
Right.
And they would say, I'm afraid. And I said, well, and I would say to them, what do you think you should do first?
Yeah.
And they would sit and watch the kids go across the monkey bars over and over and over again.
Right.
And they'd say, I want to try. And I'd say, great, I'm right here. I'm here if you need me, right?
Yep.
And then when they were done and they'd gone through 2 monkey bars and they had to drop because they didn't have the arm strength, I said, you couldn't do that last week.
Yeah.
You should be so proud of yourself. You couldn't
Yep.
do that last week.
I
And they
see
would
how
look at
hard
me
you're
and just
working.
beam like,
Yep.
the shoulders went back, but I only did 2. I said, you couldn't do 2 last week.
Yes.
And they would just be so proud of themselves. And I didn't say, I'm so proud of you. I just said, you couldn't do
Yep.
that last week.
Affirming the process. Yep.
Yes. Yes. And so I think that is the gift that we can give to children that will help them take more risks if we give them the feedback that they need. So Rixa, I can't believe it's almost time. So don't go anywhere. So for more information on other Porch Play Chats or to join IPA-USA, please visit our website at IPAUSA.org. And until next time, thanks for playing.